Guess who's back? Back again. That's right, my buddy is back on the show. 25-time Bassmaster winner, 7-time Bassmaster Angler of the Year, 4-time Classic Champion, 4 MLF victories, and FLW Angler of the Year title. And this week, he's talking to me about retirement. All the way from Kalamazoo, Michigan, the one and only KVD, Kevin VanDam, joins me this week on...
I'm Bob Cobb from the Bassmaster. Welcome to Mercer.
Welcome one, welcome all, friends, family, freeloaders, fishing freaks. You're all welcome here at the Awkwardly Honest Fishing Podcast that goes by my last name, which is Mercer. Welcome into another episode of Mercer. Happy Wednesday, happy hump day. Want to welcome in all our humpers that tune in week after week, making this the #1 rated podcast on this particular channel. And I can't thank you guys enough for that support week after week. You guys are incredible. And I'm proud of what this little show has become. And I'm proud of what you guys have chosen to allow this show to become. And this week's show is going to be another good one. I promised you last week, we're not going anywhere. We're going to make... the goal is to make a cool show each and every week. And one of the coolest things that we read in the comments is like people will be like, this is your best show. There's no better. They don't get better. And then somebody else comes on, they're like, well, this was your best. It's up to the anglers. As long as they're willing to be open, honest, and awkward at times, which they all have been, this show will keep being good. This show's what I can promise you, it'll be something different every single week. Some weeks it's pure hilarity. Some weeks it's a tearjerker. And some weeks it's all of the above. But it ultimately is all up to the anglers. And I usually don't have anglers on that close to each other. Like if I've had an angler on, probably won't have them on for a while. But when I had Kevin VanDam on just a couple months ago, I had no idea he was going to retire. I actually thought that would have been a good question to ask him, but I'm not that good at my job, so I didn't. But obviously that is the news now. Kevin VanDam is retiring. And I think everybody probably feels a lot like I felt when I heard the news. Just in shock. Not that he is retiring, but he's Kevin VanDam. He's just always been. He's there. And to think of him not being part of tournament fishing is almost impossible. But I can't thank him enough for everything that he has done for this industry. Kevin VanDam literally changed this entire industry, from on the water to off the water to in the boardroom to how you conduct business. Every single asset of this sport is better because of Kevin VanDam. My job, myself personally, if it wasn't for Kevin VanDam and Mark Zona, I wouldn't have my job. So thank you to both of them. And I will never stop thanking them, because I think that's one of the worst things about mankind, how people will accept a leg up, but then they forget about the person that helped them. I'll never forget. Kevin VanDam and Mark Zona are the reason that I work for Bass, and I'm so thankful for everything they've done. But most of all, what I'm so thankful for is the friendship, is the people that they are, and not just with Kevin and Mark, but with their families. And I got to congratulate Sherry, Jackson, Nicholas, and Kevin on this retirement, because you guys have given up so much as a family for our industry. And just let me let you know that it's just my humble opinion, but I think it's echoed by many, many people. Those things that Kevin may have missed, those things that your family may have missed, didn't go for nothing. I mean, the impact that will be felt in our industry will go on for generations, literally generations, decades from now. People will talk about the great Kevin VanDam. I mean, to look at a record book of what he's accomplished in this sport, it's unfathomable, it's unthinkable, and many believe it's unbreakable records. But most of all, what Kevin VanDam brought to our sport is a new identity, a new way that people relate to who a professional angler is. And I can't thank him enough for that. And I can't thank him enough for his friendship. And the cool thing about him being retired is he can do more stuff like this, more podcasts. So that's good for me, for you guys. And I'm thankful for that. And but most of all, I'm thankful for the friendship. And I know I've said that a few times, but I am so thankful for his friendship. And just because he's retiring from tournaments doesn't mean his friendship ends. It just means we get to hang out a little more. I appreciate him always being open, always being honest, and on this show at times being awkward. But I thank him for that. And I congratulate him on an incredible retirement. But I think part of what makes his retirement so shocking to so many is because what he built was so big. You knew it was going to go away at some time. You just hoped it wasn't today. So that's why this week is VanDam, VanDominate, VanDone. Well, let's find out from the man himself. And before I bring him in, let's really hope this goes a lot better than it did when he told me in person. Because when he told me, when they called and we had the conversation before it was even public, I was a blubbering mess. Like I just kept saying, wow. I was a little hungover from the Chiefs winning the night before, and my reaction wasn't best. So here goes take two. Let's hope it goes better this time. From Kalamazoo, Michigan, the one and only KVD, Kevin VanDam. KVD, this is weird. I mean, I'm hoping that this goes smoother than when you called me to tell me you're retiring, because all I know is I just kept saying, wow. Like there's very few times where I'm lost for words, but I was an idiot during that phone call.
No, that was a crazy day. All in all, I mean, just a lot of things going on, and right at the start of the first tournament of the year for me too. So, but yeah, no, it's real. And, at the time it was, I had a lot of emotions going on too that day. And your reaction was like, you were shocked. And I was surprised by that, actually.
Really? What yeah. did you think what my reaction was going to be? Like,
no, it's not that I thought that, but I just, I mean, I don't know. I was surprised that you were surprised.
Yeah, no, it was a weird emotional roller coaster. The Chiefs had just won the Super Bowl. I get a call from you and Sherry, and I'm thinking, oh my, what good friends. Like they're calling to congratulate me on a team that I just cheered for. And that's how it started. And the next thing I know, you're retired. And I don't think I'm shocked that you retired. I think we've kind of talked about this in the past. Like I knew that you weren't going to be one of those guys who fished, late into your, you didn't want to be not that there's anything wrong with being Rick Klum, but that wasn't the path you had planned to take. But what did it feel like for you to make that announcement?
It was, I mean, it was definitely stressful. I think Sherry felt the same way. I mean, it's just the unknown, and again, just like you said, everybody's different. Everybody has their own time, but I've been fishing professionally for 32 years. This is my 33rd season. So I'm not retiring, I'm just retiring from the tournament trail. I mean, the grind of the tour it's real. The road life. And I've, done it a long time, and I love it. I do. I'm sure when the season rolls around next year, I'm going to miss it. I'm a fan, so I'll be following it for sure. But I'm just looking forward to the opportunity, that's in front of me to still be, I still want to be a great ambassador for fishing and conservation in the outdoors and the sport. I've tried really hard to do that my whole career, and I just think that this is an opportunity to even go to another level.
Yeah. How long did you know? How long did you know that you were planning on making this announcement?
It really came together pretty fast. So it's, obviously you and I, we've talked about it in the past. It's like, hey, how long are you going to fish? I've had plenty of those conversations with Zona, with Davey Height, with Scott Rook, and I was, before Davey retired, we had all these conversations. It's like, everybody knows there's going to be a day and a time. And it's so easy to stay in the same routine. I've been doing this a long time. You're used to fishing tournaments, the whole system, the whole way that you run your season, your life, your schedule. It's all that we've ever really known. And it's like I say, change is hard, but it's something that I've been thinking about and toying with. And really, because again, I'm not retiring, and I feel, obligated. I've got a lot of companies that have a lot invested in me, and I have a lot invested in them. One of the things that I'm the most proud about over my career is the long-term relationships that I've had and the loyalty that I've had, and not only me, but the companies I work with have reciprocated back. So that's important to me. And that going forward is really important to me. I know this is a transition, but I think, and after the conversations that I had, and that's really kind of where it all started, is I had a few conversations with a few people. Johnny Morris was one that I had a deep conversation with about it, to see, because again, I've been with Bass Pro and Nitro my whole career. We have a great partnership. We have a great relationship together, where it's a business relationship, but it's also a lot of friendship. And I can say that about most of my partners that I have. So, I had that conversation with him. A big conversation that I had as well, somebody that I truly respect and that nobody probably, fans don't know, is Joe Brown from Johnson Outdoors. So Joe is the guy that I worked with to make the transition when, I was already with Humminbird for a long time, but to make the transition over to Minn Kota as well. And I told him at the time, I'm like, man, I'm in this is, I take this serious if I'm gonna make a change. And at the time, Motor Guide and Brunswick were in a lot of turmoil, and I've been with Motor Guide my whole career, and it was not an easy decision, but behind the scenes, it was an easy decision, especially as if the people at Johnson Outdoors, at Minn Kota and Humminbird, and they're phenomenal people, and they know how to do things, and they're relentless, and they're always pushing to be their best in everything, to put the best products out. And that's the type of people, that's the companies I want to be associated with. So that conversation with Joe was one, because I have, again, a lot of respect for him and the job that he's done there. And, he's like, hey, I think you'll be much more valuable and important to us not fishing tournaments. I built we've worked hard to build the, brand and that credibility over a lot of years fishing tournaments. And that's my whole lifestyle. And it's just something that, I want to continue to carry forward. And so that's the conversations that that Sherry and I really had, is like, hey, we want to make sure that everybody is going to be good with this. We would still like to continue these, relationships that we have, and even improve it. And really across the board, I have zero, not one person, not one company not be anything but really ecstatic about the idea or the thought process. So it really came together pretty fast in that time, in that time frame. And Johnny Morris was, again, just right up that same way. And I have a ton of respect. He's he's a great friend of mine. And again, I've been super loyal and they've been really loyal to me. So that was really, really important that we were on the same page there in this announcement. I mean, in this sport, nobody ever quits. Nobody ever goes away. And I'm not either. I mean, you look at Roland Martin, Jimmy Houston, Bill Dance, Rick Clunn. I mean, there's a lot of anglers that are still fishing on tour, and everybody's got, has their own thought process in that, how long you want to compete or how long you want to do this. And I just came to the conclusion, and, again, I think Sherry, she struggled with it more than I did, but I just come to the conclusion that it's the right time, it's the right time for me. And it was the right time for us. And after that day, just, I had a ton of emotions, a lot of different things going on, but I'm at peace with it for sure. And it's a relief, I guess, to some extent. And, I wish that tournament that week would have started a little better for me. And I finished, coming on strong there at the end. And I ended up 8 ounces from being cut after the second day, after being in basically last place going in. So that was frustrating because I felt, as a competitor, I had an unbelievable opportunity. And you want I want my last season to be special. And even during that tournament, when things were going bad the first day, I'm like, I don't have anything to complain about. You look around, I'm in Florida, I'm in shorts, it's sunny, it's nice weather. I've been super fortunate to be in the position that I'm in. But then the competitor kicks in and, I'm like, you ding dong, and, you want to kick yourself in the hind end and go. I mean, the hardest thing for me at this point in my career as a competitor is to be able to manage all that experience, all those past tournaments, all that history that I have, and, use it to your advantage without letting it dig you into a hole. And as you go to, as I'm going down there and things aren't going right, and I've never seen conditions like that where the lake got whipped into a mud hole like that by, the winds and stuff before the tournament started, to know. And I have all these areas that I've caught them in the past, and you just, you want to run around, and that history slowed me down to making the right decisions based on the conditions. And I knew right now it's like, when I finally made the transition and started doing the right thing, I started jacking them, and I'm like, why didn't you do this? If I'd have started 20 minutes earlier, it'd have been a different story and a whole different week. But so I've got to learn that for the rest of the season. And that one stings. And I can tell you that next year some tour is going to be going to Toho, and I'm gonna look back and go, gosh dang, if I had that one to do over again, or I wish I was there again this year. So that part is never going to change, because how competitive I am. So we'll just have to find a new way to work that out.
So why do you know that now is the right time? Like, what is there something that clicked, or did you have a number in your head? Or, why is now?
It's just, I don't know. It's just a few years ago would have been a really good time, when the whole split happened between the two leagues and all that. That would have been a good time. And Sherry begged me, tried to get me to, but I just, in my mind, and I'm hard-headed like that, and that would have been a good time. I just think, looking back now, gosh, if I would have retired then, I could be so far ahead in this next phase of my career that I'm about to start right now. And, but I just wasn't ready. I mean, I was just too competitive, too stubborn, whatever you want to call it. And I don't know. I love the competition. And I told you before, I mean, my favorite thing about this sport is the competition and the people. You know,
Yeah.
I love the people, you know, whether it's the other anglers, the staff, the tournament staff. I mean, it's like a second family to you, and you spend a lot of time with them, and that'll be probably one of the hardest things. But, you know, I mean, I'm still going to be around at events and ICAST and, you know, World's Fishing Fair out. So I'll still see a lot of people, and a lot of my good friends that are in the industry, you know, again, like a Bill Dance or a Roland Martin or even Klon or whatever. That's the only times you see them really is at these other events anyway. So that won't change, but the day-to-day, you know, people, you know, when I always roomed with Scott Rook and Davey Height, I mean, Scott and I talk a few times a year now where we were together all the time. And Davey and I talk a lot still. I mean, Davey and I, their family and ours have been close since Parker was a little kid, you know, I mean, when he started. So we talk quite a bit more, but, you know, right now I room with Casey Ashley and his wife, Kenzie, and the Robinsons and Jonathan. And, you know, I told them the night before. I mean, they didn't have any idea either. And they're pretty shocked as well, you know, so I guess I shouldn't be so surprised by you when Sherry and I called you to tell you that. But yeah, I mean, that's your family, you know, I mean, that's who you're used to spending. That's your second family, and it's who you're spending time with. And that'll be one of the harder things to deal with for sure.
Yeah, not being on the road and not, and I don't think, I mean, I think I was shocked, but I was also like trying to search for the right, you know, how momentous of an occasion it is. You know what I mean? Like your buddy's retiring from what I think is the most, I know is the most dominant career ever in our sport. And I'm like, I'm supposed to be good at talking, and I'm keep searching for like, what am I supposed to say now? And all I just kept saying is, wow, wow. What have other anglers' reaction been like?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it all across the board. I think there's a lot of guys that are, because, you know, guys are competitive, right? And from a competitive standpoint, you know, I've had a lot of them like, man, it's just not going to be the same with you out there, you know. And I'm like, yeah, guys, I'm sorry, but, you know, this is the decision that I've made, and it is. But I mean, it's overall been really positive. I got a ton of texts and phone calls and, you know, lots of response on social media. And, you know, it's been over. I mean, there's not been, I haven't seen, and I guess I haven't looked, but I haven't seen really anybody say anything negative. But I mean, why would they either? I would hope they wouldn't.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some riddance, you know, glad you're gone. But I haven't heard any of it. And again, the people that I know that have relationships with and friends have been just overwhelmingly supportive. And you know, when you live it, you understand, you know, what it's like. And 33 years, or, you know, that's a lot, and it doesn't seem like it. That's a weird thing to say. It seems like yesterday I was, Sherry has been going through and kind of, that's what she does. She's a very organized person, right? And she does a lot of things, and when the kids were little, I mean, the amount of pictures that she took of the kids, of the boys when they were younger, and the things that we did and all the experiences, and that she has a whole huge closet full of that stuff. So she was going through a lot of old pictures, and I saw one that she had laid out that she found. It was Louis Stout and I, with our first book right after we'd gotten it published the very first time. And I mean, I look like I'm 13 years old and he looks like he's 30, you know, I mean, it's just, and it's like, wow, it just seems like yesterday that happened. And then when you look at the picture, it's like, yeah, that was 1992 when that happened. So it goes quick, and I wouldn't trade it for anything, for sure.
Have you even stopped to look at what you've accomplished, or is that like, I feel like you're just so goal oriented and so competitive that I don't know that you'll ever realize how much, like, you personally yourself, you know what I mean? Like, like when you started this, did you have, I know you always said you wanted to win, and did you have any idea that it would become what it is?
No, definitely not. And that's not why it's not why I ever did it or why I continue to do it. I mean, obviously you want to win every time. I mean, it's just like, that's why I can't get over this last tournament. You know, it just drives me crazy. And I know better. You know, you don't carry that with you and you move on. You know, we've got Red Crest this coming week, and I've got to focus on that. But it's still the thing that I take solace in that tournament, as bad as it started, is that I did figure it out, and I was on the right deal to have a chance to win the thing. You know, Chris Lane and I started 100 yards apart from each other the first day, and neither of us caught nothing. And I mean, it changed much, but he made the right adjustments and was able to kind of put it together. And then when I finally figured it out, it was like, oh my gosh, this isn't that hard. And it started clicking. And those are the things that I look back at. And I can tell you, there's many times over my career where maybe I finished 30th, maybe I finished 40th, maybe you didn't even make the cut, or you finished 3rd or 10th or whatever. But just those little decisions that held you back and kept you from an opportunity to win. But the thing about it is that I was this close to it, you know, and that's just the nature of it, you know. I mean, there's a lot of guys that are really, really good now, and it's super competitive, and it just shows how hard it is. And if you're not one of those guys out there competing under those conditions, you don't truly understand and appreciate that. But in my mind, I know that I'm as competitive as I've ever been, and I, you know, I haven't forgot how to catch them or anything like that. You know, it's hard to win at the top level in this sport. So I do not take any of that for granted. I don't take any, you know, we went through the same thing a few years back, you know, when I, at the tail end of my Elite Series career there, he's like, oh, when is Kevin going to ever win? I hadn't won in a while. And then, you know, things just line up, and, you know, I got, you know, 2, 3, 4, you know, there in a short period of time. So that's just the way this sport is. It cycles, and people get on runs and get hot. And I've watched that time and time over my whole career. You know, I remember the year that David Fritz won Angler of the Year. I remember when Davey won Angler of the Year. You know, I remember when Brent Chapman won Angler of the Year. I mean, you just see a guy that just gets on the right schedule and gets on a roll and goes. And when that's happened to me, I'm smart enough to realize that it's special. And I wish I knew how to flip that switch on and off, but there's not there's not an exact guaranteed way to do it. I wish.
Yeah. Is that what makes this sport so frustrating? Because I mean, if you're not putting right, you spend countless hours on a putting green learning, getting that negative out of you. But in this sport, like, it's that mental switch that everybody talks about, like what Angler of the Year season, it's just something different, but you can't make it happen. As a competitor, is that frustrating?
It is, because when you're it's the most frustrating when things aren't going well, because I know in my mind that, man, I'm doing the right things, I'm making the right decisions, I'm putting the work in, I'm practicing hard, I'm doing I'm doing my research, I'm doing all the things that I need to do to be successful and to win, and yet it's not happening. Like you say, golf, it's so much about being, repetitive training, right? To learn that swing, and fishing, it has nothing to do with that at all. Obviously you got to be skilled at casting and skipping boat docks and flipping, and be adept with a spinning rod and a bait caster and all those things, and a lot of techniques, but that's just a given. Beyond that, it's all about those little decisions and timing and reading the weather and adapting to changes. And it's there's no formula for it. You can't just read a book and be good at it. You can't just get a coach and say, well, you're going to all of a sudden turn the corner. It is such a mental game, and not that other sports are the same. I mean, extremely mental to keep your focus to do that. But I think you can learn certain aspects that of a sport like golf that you can't in fishing.
Yeah. There's a lot less variables. I mean, if you're driving good, you're probably driving good on the next course. You know what I mean? If you're putting good,
Yeah.
And in some ways, I think in pro fishing, and you might have just even hit on it a few minutes ago, the more time you spend doing it, the more knowledge you gain. But you also have to be able to catalog and retrieve the right information at the right times, which, I mean, is, when you think about it, like, that's like asking a golfer to explain the Masters course every year for the last 33 years. Like, it's almost impossible.
Yeah, but you do see that in the schedule, where the schedule lines up to fit a guy's strengths.
Yeah.
And it's the same in golf. So I have a lot of NASCAR buddies too. And you see, they're good at a certain style of track, whether it's a short track or a mile and a half or whatever. And when it works out like that, that's when they get in those little runs and they'll win 2-3 races in a row, or be in the top 5, because it just is a comfort level. And I've had that plenty of times over my career too, where look, Kentucky Lake, the first week of June, you do that run where you go from Gunnersville to Kentucky Lake, to anywhere up and down the Tennessee River in that time frame. And that's just something that I've got a great feel for. And other guys will be the same thing. They start out in Florida. Terry Scroggins is going to probably have a good start when you go from, Okeechobee to the St. Johns River to kick off the season, because that's what his comfort level is. And you see that in our sport for sure.
One of the things that I've heard in other sports, and especially in MMA and stuff like that, when you get a long running champion and they lose, one of the most shocking things and he was honest, Anderson Silva, when he lost, they asked him what emotion you're feeling right now, and his first reaction was relief. And I think it's one of the things that nobody talks about in competitive sports. But the weight of the crown or whatever, and that sounds funny, but and I'm not meaning that you had the crown your entire career, but you carry a lot of the industry. And on top of that, you put so much pressure on yourself to constantly be competitive. Do you feel any of that? Do you feel any of kind of a relief?
I wouldn't say so. I think I've put as much pressure on myself to win as I ever have. And it's been hard, over my career, man. I have competed in every format, from points to pounds to, we started 7 fish, then it's 5 fish. And, we did megabucks formats, we did E50s, we've done major league fishing, every fish counts, all these things. And I can tell you that the one thing that I'm pretty relieved of is we're back at a 5 fish limit this year. I mean, that fits me for sure a lot better, but I love that feeling of fishing those cups where, especially when I loved it the most when it's no information, no practice, no nothing. You just show up, you find out where you're going, and then you got to put it together. I think that's a strength of mine. So it gives me a lot of confidence, but when we practice and show up and every fish counts, it's hard, man. It's the hardest format I've ever competed in for sure. And now with the 5 fish format going back, and that's, what most everybody's used to and accustomed to.
Yeah.
Just like that last tournament, it was way different for me. I had a really bad first day. I only caught 3 fish for 5.5 pounds or something like that. And I'm way behind. And I knew I had to catch 20 to catch up. And if it was a every fish counts, I'd have been probably even way further behind in that situation. But even so, the mentality is there. It's like, hey, you've got to catch a big bag today. You've got to, you better fish the right conditions and the baits to be able to do that. And that's kind of what I like. I think that mental toughness part of it is something that I thrive on, or I have. It doesn't work out every time by any means, but my whole arsenal, my mentality, my bait selection, the things that I'm doing is night and day different than it was a year ago based on that. So that part to me, I'm right back in my comfort zone again, I guess. So for 28 years, I fished a certain way with that level. And then we make this change and you got to relearn some things for sure. And then now I'm back to, and it just felt, I felt right at home. I didn't have a good, it doesn't show it from my finish, but mentally I'm right back there.
So that mental toughness part of your career, and that, to be honest, it's one of the things that I think is synonymous with you being driven. Attitude is everything. But when did that start for you? Were you like, when you first showed up at Bass, did you have that same mental toughness, or was that something you had to grow into or mature into?
I think early on, I didn't. I learned it through winning. When you win, it's like, oh, this is way different. It's a different feeling. It's a different reaction from everybody. And so, I won a tournament, the first one I ever won, 100 at Lake Lanier. And going through it at the time, I'm just out there just scrambling every day, trying to catch as much as I can. And you think, and it didn't really sink in until afterwards. And before that, when I started, my first season, I made a check in every tournament for a long time. And it was kind of a big deal. It was a record then. I've probably been broken since then, but I had 23 tournaments in a row where, I was in the money. I think it was 23, something like that. And the media started to build on that. So then it was my focus, after at tournament 15, it's like, oh my gosh, I got to make sure that don't miss the cut in this deal. And so I fished more conservatively through that. And then once I started, once I won, then it changed things. And the more you win, the more it changes you. And I learned a lot from, and I told you this before, I learned a lot from Denny Brower. Back in the early days of my career, Denny was one of the best closers in the business. Larry Nixon and him both, when they got within striking distance, they would be a force to be reckoned with, and especially Denny, because Denny would not be scared to take a big risk, change up what he's doing to go try to catch a 20-pound bag when he was 7 pounds back to have a chance to win. And I watched him do that a few times, and I saw that determination and that mentality. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is how you got to play. And it took time to, that was something that I had to learn, so to speak. And you have to get in the comfort zone. And, for a young angler starting out, there's no way you can do that. There's too much pressure to perform, to survive, to, you're trying to attract sponsors, keep the sponsors you got. You're trying to build your career. People say that. I've seen it a million times. Hey, I'm going to go out today. I'm behind. I'm going to swing for the fence. How many times have you heard that? And I can see it in their eyes. They're not swinging for the fence. And I've seen that in a lot of seasoned pros too. I see that they're scared. I see that scared look. And that's one thing I can promise you is I've never been scared.
So when we hear people say, when that person learns to win, look out, that's a real thing, or is that? Sometimes I wonder.
No, it is.
It feels like just swinging for the fences. But I mean, if you're saying it's real, it's real.
I believe it's real. I mean, I've seen that with a lot of anglers that have success for a long time and then just can't. They just can't get over the hump. And there's some guys that never win, but you take a look at a guy like Bill Owen, for example. Bill has been super successful, and he's had a lot of good tournaments and been close. And then to see him win at Pickwick, I mean, there's not a more deserving guy there. And that's, to me, is the perfect case of somebody like that it took him that. And now I'll promise you, his mentality is different. He had a really good event last week, in Florida. Well, it's actually Georgia, Seminole, but and when I saw Bill up there in the top and was, getting after it like that, I'm like, yeah, I like the way he's fishing and what he's doing. That's a dangerous guy. And it didn't work out, but the next time you keep putting yourself in that position and you have that right mentality, he's going to knock off a few more wins. And that's what happens, is when guys finally learn that and have that confidence where they're going out there and fishing truly and believe in themselves, they're not scared anymore. That's a dangerous person.
Take me through because I think this is one of the things you don't get credit for in your career. And I think if everybody just stops and looks at it, it's one of the most amazing things. Your career started with fireworks. I mean, like you said, you know what I mean? Like you didn't have those few years where, I'm trying to figure out how to make the classic. Making the classic was just what you did. You know what I mean? Your levels of success were whether it's this high or this high, but it was always high. And then all of a sudden you hit the drought, however many years it was, 4 or 5 years you went without a win. And everybody, every tournament angler on earth wanted to believe that KVD is done and he's never going to win again. But to have been somebody who was that lethal from the start, and to have to kind of step back and be like, how do I fix where I'm at? Was that a process for you, or was it the same all the way through and then the wins just started coming again?
Yeah, it wasn't a change. I heard it, but in my mind, I mean, I knew I was doing what I do and fishing. And like I said, those opportunities were there, and I just didn't, this didn't go right, or you miss a fish here or there, and you miss a caught, or you don't make the final day, and you just, I wasn't, in my mind, far off, and my system wasn't broke, and it just, I was able to turn the corner. But it was the same for earlier in my career. It took me, I think I was 11 years in before I won my first classic. Yeah. And, it's one of those things where a lot of the media is like, oh, he's a great angler, but he can't win the big one, doesn't win. You just can't do it. And so I can tell you, when I won my first classic, that was a big relief. And it was another one of those learning periods. Is like, okay, the classic is a different tournament. It's not a top 100. It's not an invitational. It's not it's a different animal. It's a 3-day tournament, small field, should be easy to win. But everything else that went around the classic, especially back in those days, it was just really, really intense. It was hard to do. And I had to learn in those early classics, when it was summertime, I thought for a while that, man, I need to focus on offshore deep fish because they're going to be less pressured. Well, what I learned is that the exact opposite is true. Those are the most pressured fish by having an armada of boats around you. Yeah. And I always had one, my whole career, gosh, man, I got lots of stories like that, crazy things happening around you out in the water, and fans affecting the game. And that's part of it when you fish public water. So it took me a while to learn that the place to be in those deals is fishing shallow. And now that we're fishing, the Classic and Red Crest are both springtime events, it's typically, depending on the lake, it's typically a shallower deal. But the thing that's really helped with that is because it's so much better to watch live now, to watch as a fan, than it is to be, if you're a spectator boat and you're 100 yards away with binoculars, you're not seeing the same thing as having, a camera guy right in the back of your boat, and you're watching him. You can see exactly how he turns the reel and what he's doing, and listen to every word he's saying. Live bass fishing has totally changed the sport. I used to be able to get away with a lot of things, keep a lot of things secret until that started. TV changed it a little bit, but those shows wouldn't be, they weren't real time, like it is now. I've been, like, for instance, you look at how a jerkbait is such a year-round lure. I mean, for years and years and years, it's always been for me. And, I think some eye-opening events were, I won a MLF Cup and lacrosse in the late summer with a jerkbait up there, and at Ross Barnett at one of the elites, I ended up fishing second to Cannell, jerkbaiting a lily pad field.
Yeah.
Nobody was like, oh, that's dirty water. Nobody would ever thought to do that. And so that's the things that you're seeing, and not just me, but every pro angler out there that's on live, when, tournaments are not won very often by the way that you would think, or that the traditional way that they would fish, that lake at that time of year, the way the locals would say, well, hey, at Rayburn in the spring, you should be throwing a red-eye shad and around the bank, and some guy goes out there with a Demiki rig and 30 foot of water, or a 10XD or something like that, and wins. They're typically not won. I mean, look at Okeechobee. In a million years, would you think that somebody would be winning with forward-facing sonar at Okeechobee? When I looked at the schedule, I'm like, yeah, the season, it's not going to be, you're not going to see that be a big factor there. I'm looking at, we're starting off at Toho and Kissimmee. I'm like, yeah, and Toho and the offshore grass, I'm definitely Mega Live is going to be a factor, and it was to an extent. But these first three tournaments of the year, forward-facing sonar was a lot more viable than I thought it would be going in. And you look at, we're at Lake Norman next. I mean, you look at the way the schedule's going, it's liable that every tournament all season long is forward-facing sonar is going to be a factor. So, I mean, don't think that I'm not working my tail off to learn it. And not just me, but I can tell you all the engineers that I know at Humminbird and the whole team there, they are busting their tail to make improvements with it every single day. And I'm sure that the competition is too. I mean, the team at Lawrence and at Garmin, they've got to be, it's a space race, so to speak. And it's one of those things, but it's no different than what we're trying to do at Strike King compared to the guys at Rapala or Berkeley or Six Sense or whoever other lure company is. We're all trying to build the next best mousetrap, the next best thing, the thing that makes a difference, that makes you more efficient, that helps you out there on the water. And that's what competition drives. And that has never been, it seems like it's maybe more evident now, but it's been that way since the start of my career. And we're always trying to find, tournaments drive innovation, always have, always will. It's what drives our sport.
What do you think the long-term effect of forward-facing sonar is on?
It's hard. It's going to be hard for me to say exactly, but that being said, it's helping a lot of people be more successful.
Yeah, it's definitely doing that.
Yeah, I mean, my dad's 84 years old, and he's had a lot of health issues. And one of the things that really was motivating for him last year is I started to tell him about Mega Live, how cool it would be on his pontoon boat for bluegill fishing at his little, lake that he lives on. And I set one up on his pontoon and went out there, and I'm like, oh my God, this is, it's incredible. It's amazing. Just how good it is. I mean, you still got to make them bite, but it helps you find the fish. And just like what we're seeing on tour is you see in real time how they're reacting to your presentation. so that you can make a change. So you can change colors, you can change your cadence, you can change from a jerk bait to a swim bait or a debiki rig or a drop shot or something like that to get these fish to actually commit. And we've never been able, we've always guessed. My whole career, I've guessed at that. And it totally, since I started using Mega Live, it's totally changed what I thought I knew was fact for 30 plus years is totally throwing it all out the window. Like bass always relate to structure, and they're always going to be at least around a depth change or something like that. Well, I can tell you this, there is so many fish just randomly roaming around out in the open. It's ridiculous. And that's what it's done. People got wound up at side imaging when it came out. They did with the Alabama rig. But this is it is one of the greatest innovations, if not the greatest innovation in sonar technology in my career. And it's here to stay. I mean, it's not going away, and it's very intriguing. And the same thing will happen. I mean, people will learn it more. It's going to get easier. It's going to get less expensive. And in the end, the main thing is it's helping a lot of people have a much more enjoyable time on the water. And I mean, as the tournament anglers, we're just a small group of people that fish. And I mean, it's dominating bass tournaments right now, but it'll bleed over, I think, into other species for salmon and trout, for walleye. And where I think it probably has the most potential is in saltwater. To know that a marlin came up and just looked at your spread, but didn't commit to it, or didn't come to the top, or didn't show himself, it would be a big deal. Then hey, I got to change the color of my bait or my boat speed or whatever. So, and that's where I see the future really expanding. I mean, this is just the beginning. I think. I mean, people complained at first about cameras, right? Underwater cameras. And, what's the next step was going to be forward facing sonar that's X-ray vision. I mean, who knows what the future holds. I said this, I did a walkthrough video on my boat, and I'm like, man, if I would have told you at the beginning of my career, 32 years ago, that I'd have 5 graphs on my boat, I'd have told you you're crazy. And now, if you want to be competitive on tour, you better have a Mega 360, a Mega Live, a graph just for mapping. And I mean, it's such an important tool out there as a professional that you have to have it, and you better learn it. So, and people say, well, the young guys are this and that. My problem is I don't want to trust it 100%. I see it on our tour. There's a handful of guys that's all they do. They go around and they're just, we call it flashlighting around. They're beaming around, looking, and that's all they do. They're not even casting until they see one. And it doesn't matter if you're in Florida or Michigan or Texas or wherever. And a lot of times it works, but boy, it's an epic fail at times too. So what I've really learned is that it's a great addition to my style as a power fisherman. I'm covering a lot of water. I'm constantly looking around, and I'm seeing fish follow a bait, and then I know to make that change or to make an adjustment. In a lot of cases, I can do it on that cast and catch them. I had a couple of really good tournaments last year that Mega Live was a big factor in, as an addition to just the cranking pattern that I was on, or the jerk bait pattern that I was on, just really added to it. But I've never gone out there and just like, oh, hey, I'm just scanning around and don't even make a cast until you see them. But there's times when you do that, but I'm still fishing and just really integrating it into it. So whether you like it or not, it's here to stay, and I'm here to embrace it for sure.
Do you think it's one of the first times in the sport where the young guys actually they come equipped with an advantage over some of the older anglers?
I don't think so. And that being said, but I'll tell you this is that there is no substitute for experience
Yeah.
out there on the water. And what the young guys now today, and I'm not talking about the guys on tour, but you watch these college anglers coming up, the top high school and college anglers coming up, is there's so much information out there that we didn't have, at the beginning of my career. There's a million, you can use your phone, pull up a million YouTube videos on how to learn a technique or depth finder settings or anything like that. And you can watch all this live bass fishing and, there's so much more information. When I started, it was, Sunday morning watching Bill Dance and Hank Parker and Jimmy Houston and reading Bassmaster magazine. And that was it. And then going to a sports show and hearing one of those guys talk. I mean, seminars were a big deal. I did a ton of bass universities and people ate those up, and we gave a lot of people a lot of confidence and a lot of head start. Now you can pull all of that and 10 times more just on your phone. And that's what's really helped the learning curve for these young anglers. So, and they're putting in the work. I mean, you watch, I watched the Lee brothers from the start. They're probably the first two guys that came up to the college ranks to have a lot of success. And, they are prodigies of the former generation. Jordan Lee said it plenty of times. I mean, but he's putting the time in on the water and learning these bodies of water and learning new techniques and pushing himself to go. And I mean, and that's the difference, you can't not put the work in. And you see the same thing. I mean, there's now, these guys all are going pre-fishing every lake. They're doing their homework. They're spending a lot of time on Google Earth. It's the same thing that's happened in other professional sports. When I grew up, in high school, you could play football, baseball, and basketball and be good. Not anymore. You better focus on one and work at it 365, 24/7. If you ever want to make it to Division I in college. Well, in pro fishing, it's the same way. You have to put the time and effort in from an earlier age. Yeah, there's young anglers, but they're not young at fishing. They've learned there, and it's the same in football or any of those other sports as well. They put their time in and put the.
Do you think the days of a specialized pro like a Denny Brower, they used to say, he's your jig guy, David Fritz is a cranking guy, but and it was like you could sustain a career at one time, but it doesn't feel like that anymore to me. It feels like you have to be so well-rounded. What's your thoughts?
I would agree with you. You have to be really well-rounded. You can't just be a power fish. That's something that I learned later in my career is like, hey, these guys are too good. You can't leave a spot that's got a bunch of fish on it, just because they're not biting a crankbait anymore. You better pick up a shaky head and play cleanup on it as well. And I think that's really, really evident. Now you see guys still shine, just like we talked about earlier, when you come into a body of water that really fits their true strength, but you better be good at all of it. And I think from the beginning, that one of the things that really helped me was coming from Michigan, where we have a lot of diversity, because everybody said, oh, you can't come from Michigan and go to Alabama and Texas and Florida and beat these guys. But there's similar water here to everything that I would see. The only thing that was a kind of really flipped me out the very first time was the Potomac River and tidal water, to see that, to learn the whole intricacies of tide fishing. But reservoirs, in the South are actually, in a lot of cases, a lot easier than fishing natural lakes in the North. So it was being versatile was something that really helped me out a lot. And I think some of the best young anglers you watch right now too, I mean, they're just as good with a drop shot and a spinning rod as they are with a 6XD or a flipping stick and a swim jig. You know, I mean, they're not scared to do any of it. And that's what it takes now. And if you're one dimensional or you're hard headed, yeah, you're gonna have a hard time being consistent.
How hard was it throughout your, and still is throughout your entire career, to stay on the water and stay driven? Because it feels like in this sport, like at one time when you're first starting, everybody has a lot of time to spend in the water, and then the more successes you achieve, the hardest thing is probably just staying on the water.
It is. I'll promise you, there's a lot of people that end up putting a lot more time in than I do, and it's just, you know, it's a product of the success that I've had and the you know, the commitments that I have on my time. And you know, part of it is too is where you're at in your life too. You know, I mean, a kid that's 23 years old and is not married and you know, is living at home still, he has a lot of flexibility to travel. I mean, the limiting factor is having the finances to be able to get out there, and sponsorship is not easy to get. You know, it's never been easy to do it. It's an expensive sport. You know, you know, you look at entry fees for the season and expenses, and I mean, you're talking about it's $80,000 before you ever cash a check is what you're committed to, or more, you know, and that's not counting any of your equipment. And a lot of guys just, I mean, don't have sponsorship to even for some of their equipment, and that's a tough thing to overcome. That's a lot of pressure. And it's one of the things that really helped me out is when I started, I had banked my life savings, and I had, you know, $20-some thousand in the bank, which at the time wasn't a lot, but it was enough to fish my first season of the invitationals, to fish those 6 events, pay the entry fees, not have to sleep in my truck, and go out there. And fortunately, the first tournament of the season, I won a boat that basically, I was able to sell for $20,000. That, you know, so I knew that I was going to be in a good position. And, you know, I won another couple boats that year, and, you know, had a really good start. So I didn't have to have that pressure. And I think a lot of guys that get to the top level now, you know, for that very first time, that pressure it's real, and it's hard. And if you can be fortunate and fight through that little bit, you know, tough times and a little success, the opportunities are better now than I think they've ever been for young anglers to come up into the sport. You know, it's not necessarily with endemic companies, but you know, bass fishing is so much more widely known as a professional sport than it was when I started. And I give all the credit in the world to the era at Bass for that. I mean, they brought professional bass fishing to the mainstream sports fan for the first time. And you know, there's nobody that is more aware of that than me, because that's the era when, you know, I won a lot of championships and titles during that time, and I saw it and felt it. And after that period, it changed. You know, I mean, they were with us. I guess they sold Bass after 10 years. Yeah. And you know, I mean, 2008 was a rough time, you know, for the country as a whole, with the, you know, that big economic downturn. And, you know, I think they sold it in 2010, but that era right there was, you know, you remember when they first started, you got involved with Bass, Zona got in there. You know, I remember the first show was Loudmouth Bass, and they had that whole block on Saturday mornings on ESPN2 of just bass fishing, you know. Yeah. And and the coverage and that right there is what every angler that's out there as a professional today, they can thank for, you know, having the opportunities that they have, is because that really brought it mainstream.
Yeah. There's nobody winning ESPYs anymore for bass fishing, which you did.
No. Yeah. and that was part of that, for sure, part of that, ESPN influence there. I mean, to be able to go on Mike and Mike, and go to do the ESPN car wash, and I did it, multiple times, just from winning those Classic and Angler of the Years through that era. That's, you can't, that's really extremely valuable, and that's one of the reasons that my name and brand is what it is for it. So I mean, I'm very thankful for all of those people then, and hopefully we can continue to see that. But now it's entrenched in people's minds. I mean, there's not a casual sports fan out there that hasn't seen professional bass fishing on TV. I mean, it's on too many networks now. It's on too many cable channels. It's in the, we're traveling around. We get a lot of news coverage in all these towns we go to, and things like that. So people are much more aware of it than they were, before that era.
Yeah, and the sport in generally is more visible, just even simply from wraps. Some people used to show up in town with a few stickers in their truck. Well, now everybody's got wrapped vehicles. And what was it like to go to the ESPYs and stuff like that? Like, how were you received by other mainstream athletes?
It was super cool. So Sherry and I went, and we got picked up at the airport in a limo to go to the ESPYs. And one of the other athletes that was there's two people that rode with us to the hotel. One was Pete Weber, the professional bowler.
Okay.
And the other one was Lawyer Malloy, who was played for the Patriots the first year that the Patriots won the Super Bowl with Tom Brady. And he was really friendly to us, and just blown away, just like, oh my God, you're a professional bass fisherman. That's really cool. Didn't do nothing about it, nothing about fishing. And every time we seen him or his teammates through, all the different events through there, he'd always pull us in. Actually, my wife sat with Tom Brady's sister and parents at the ESPYs, when I got my award, and we spent time with them, at the after parties and things like that. And I got to meet a lot of really cool people there. So it was an incredible experience, the whole week. And I think, just like myself, there was a whole lot of athletes there that were just super stoked to be a part of, such an honorable award show. I mean, that's the Grammys for sports, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that it's weird how ESPN doesn't get the love that they deserve. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to search hard to see somebody, ESPN destroyed bass fishing. ESPN,
no,
they put bass fishing on steroids.
Well, and I'll tell you, there's a couple of people that were really, really instrumental in making that happen. And Jerry McInnes for sure was one of them. He spent a lot of time there. But Jim Wilburn was also, Jim did a ton of programming with him, and he's one of the reasons that ESPN bought Bass originally. I mean, those guys, and a lot of other people too, really put it on some of the top executives there at ESPN on their radar. And, they thought that, I think that they were a little bit maybe arrogant in their thought that they could easily make it the next big thing, the next World Series of Poker, NASCAR, or PBR, or whatever it was. Yeah. And they didn't truly understand the fan base, and, for whatever reason. And then again, I think 2008 was a tough time decision for them, where, as a big corporate company like that, they had to decide what they were going to do with the future with it. And that's when they decided to flip it. But boy, they put a lot of dollars into it in those beginning years, 2001, 2002, early 2000s. And, a whole lot of people benefited from it. The coverage still, like you say, Jerry was very much an innovator. He's the first guy to ever, who would think you'd show up to cover a bass tournament with a helicopter, right? To get that aerial coverage. We didn't have drones, and the helicopters was the drone. So, I mean, I can tell you, I remember running down Kentucky Lake one time, and Steve Bowman was hanging out the helicopter with a camera, with his camera, and the rail that they land with a helicopter, it bumped my front butt seat. And I'm running down the lake at 70 mile an hour at Kentucky Lake leading the tournament. And they're that close to me, over the top of me. And that hit my front butt seat. And that freaked me out there a little bit, because I'm like, holy cow, I would never want them to hook that. Could have been bad. But I mean, those shots that they got were epic. And that's the one thing that the whole group at JM has always done, is they push themselves and push the envelope to look, to do it differently, to do it better, to go beyond, to think outside the box, to cover the sport, to show the mainstream sports fan what we feel as anglers. And, you know, I mean, you know how I love it. I love bass fishing. It's so special, but to be able to show that and convey that feeling and that emotion that we have as competitors to the fans. And that's the one thing that, you know, that they really did a phenomenal job with, and still do. I mean, the coverage today in bass fishing is, you know, it's the best it's ever been, for sure. And there's always, you know, everybody's trying to find new ways to show more and do more and things like that. So it's harder than ever to keep a secret. I can tell you that. There's no more secret colors, secret baits, secret techniques, because you don't miss anything anymore.
Yeah, no, you see everything, and not just the bait, but how they're working it, and how it's today's coverage is Fantasyland stuff as little as 10 years ago. Like, if you said 10 years from now, there's going to be the actual live fish, and you can see somebody that's 15 miles away from the venue and what they're doing. It's literally Fantasyland stuff. So what now? What are you going to do now?
Sherry says I'm working. No, again, my main focus is I love this sport. I like the people. I have a whole lot of friends that are engaged and involved in it. I mean, everybody, you know, it's what I know the most. And like I said, I've always tried to be a great ambassador for fishing, for conservation, and for the future of it. Johnny Morris has been a huge inspiration to me. I've seen a lot of the things that he's done behind the scenes, in different areas of the country, fresh saltwater, you know, fishing, hunting, outdoors, land conservancy, to you know, the Everglades, Okeechobee, all different kinds of things that nobody even has any idea of, to make sure that, you know, we've got a sport going forward in the future. And, you know, as technology gets better and anglers get better and more people start doing it, you know, the TVA is not building more lakes. So it's very important that these fisheries are taken care of. And I think our biologists and our state fisheries agencies are smarter and better than ever. And the tournament organizations as a whole have never worked closer with the states than they do now. I know that, you know, from the work that we've done, you know, we've done a lot with our foundation the last few years, with some habitat enhancement and stocking programs at some of the places that we've been. And they realize what a great resource it is when a Bassmaster Elite or a Bass Pro Tour event comes to town, for them to collect data about a fishery, you know, and that's going to be real critical in the future. So, you know, that is something that is important to me, but also just, I love spreading the word about how much fun fishing is and what a great family sport it is. Just, it's a great way, you know, we do it as a job, right? I'm a competitor. You make your living around it as well, but people that it's their relief, it's their recreation, it's what they do on the weekend, it's what they do to get away from the pressures of their life or their job or whatever it is that's bothering them. It's what helps you forget, and that emotion when you catch a big one, or you know, you see one eat a topwater or whatever, that that's pretty dang special. And so to help people be more successful on the water, to be an educator, influencer, ambassador, that's what I want to do. And today's platforms are, as you know, I mean, there's television shows. It'd be real easy to say, well, hey, let's just go start a TV show. But there's a lot more options and avenues out there. And again, that's really what I want to focus to do, is to be, a communicator, an influencer, an ambassador for fishing and bass fishing, especially for, competitive fishing too. It's my whole life. It's what I love, and I want to continue to do that. So that's what we're working and building, towards now. I've got this season on tour, so it's time wise. It's still a lot of weeks on the road, but we've got a lot of different things planned that we're going to be doing in between events and that this year, and next year it'll, the schedule will be a lot freer where I can, do a lot of these things that I haven't had time to for some of my sponsors in the past, do some of these special events and be part of some of these other conservation organizations and things like that. I mean, you saw, I'm on the board of the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame now. I mean, I'm on several different boards and things like that. And those things are very important to me, really going forward and trying to preserve, the history of it. It bothers me to know that there's a lot of young anglers out there right now that don't know who Ray Scott was or what he did for the sport that they're part of right now. So, that's something, history is important. It keeps you, understanding history keeps you from making certain mistakes again in the future. So that's part of it. And I am definitely looking forward to, having a lot of fun too. I'm going to enjoy this season, really sit back, soak in those sunrises and sunsets, and just appreciate that time out there. And I love that. I mean, one of the greatest things about being a professional bass tournament angler is you get to go to some of the best fisheries there are, and some of the toughest at times, depending on what Mother Nature throws at you. And I don't, I would have probably never fished the California Delta or, some of these other places if I wasn't on tour. So I want to keep doing that too. That's probably Sherry calling.
Is there any part of you that's concerned that you'll want to come back? Has to be a small part. Like,
I mean, you think about it, and I would never say never to anything, because why would you? I don't have to. No.
Somebody's leaving a message. It sounds like. All right.
Just telemarketers.
Even KVD gets bothered by telemarketers.
It would not be a complete podcast if you didn't have some kind of interruption like that. But so, at this point, I think I'm good. I don't have any intentions or plans at fishing any more tournaments other than, what I can qualify, or specialty tournaments. One of the fun tournaments that I did for quite a few years that Johnny put on through Bass Pro Shops was those Legends events. I mean, we did those in the 90s. I'd love to see that, or some specialty tournaments, things like that. I'm always going to jump into that kind of stuff, right? That's kind of fun. Some charity events. I love that, being part of that kind of stuff. But to say, hey, I want to jump back out and get back on the Bass Pro Tour, or on the Elite Series or something like that, it's just and it's a big commitment, schedule and time wise, and with the things that I'm thinking, it's not it's definitely not in my plans. But you never know. I mean, I'm not sure what opportunities will come my way. It's also new to this point, and I have ideas in my mind, that things that that I still want to do and accomplish as a person, things that I want to see, places I want to go as well. And having a little more flexible schedule will allow us to do that. I mean, Sherry and I have been together for 35 years. This is our 36th year. We had our 30th year anniversary last year, and we never, we just couldn't find time together, a special trip for that. So that's something that I really want to do is, do something real special, because you just can't, I mean, good luck finding a 2-week window in this year now with the way the season runs. And it's hard to do. And I'm 55 years old, and I've, and fortunately, knock on wood, I have not had any health issues or major, shoulder problems or back problems or things like that, I feel good and still act like I'm 16 pretty regular. So, I want to definitely be able to take some time to enjoy some things, but I don't sit still. I mean, it drives her still. It's like, I've always got to be busy. I'm going to be doing some, and I love it, man. I love that. I love that part of the job too, of the sport. I love developing. I love working with companies, and I love being out there with the fans too. I mean, it's very humbling to me that people act and treat me the way that they do, because all I'm doing is just my job that I love, and so to have that kind of support from so many people for so many years, it's pretty special, and I don't take it for granted, for sure.
So I have to ask you this, or else I'll get roasted. Because this is the rumor floating around, and I'm sure you've heard it, that KVD is retiring, going to be away for a little while, but then he's going to apply for a Legends exemption at Bass and come back and fish the Elite Series.
That's a rumor?
You haven't heard that?
I have not, to be honest.
Oh, well, maybe I just hang around with a lot of Bassmaster people. Maybe it's just a rumor at Bass. But so that's not the plan?
That is not my plan. So if I was to come back, I don't think I would take an exemption to do it. I'd have to go out and grind my way back if I wanted to do that, I think, for my own sanity.
Yeah. So how are you going to scratch the competitive itch? Pro cornhole, pro darts, pro.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. No, we'll see. I learned a long time ago, you never paint yourself into a corner, and you don't want to don't close any doors. I have the rest of my life in front of me, and I've got a lot of opportunities. Sherry and I have worked really hard to build our credibility and our name and our brand to what it is, and it's obviously going to lead to more opportunities, and we're gonna take a look at anything that comes down the road and see what makes sense for us where we're at in our life. I mean, I've got 2 boys that are grown men now, and finding their own way in the world too, and it's just like I'm in a different place in my life than I was 10 years ago, and I have you think about things differently at this point than before. I mean, I think early in your life you're just so focused on the grind and trying to get better and be more successful, and just to take care of your kids, and it's so busy, you just get that tunnel vision, just focused on keep driving forward, and that at some point you gotta kind of sit back and enjoy the sunset, or take a look at the garden that you've built. And that's something that I watched my grandfather work his whole life And his dream was to build a place and retire on a lake. And he worked his whole life, worked his tail off, and did that. And I mean, shortly thereafter, his health just really deteriorated, and he never truly got to live his dream. And, you know, you and I both know, I mean, you look at Aaron Martins, a great friend of both of ours, and what happened to their family is shockingly eye-opening. And unfortunately, I've had plenty, you know, several other scenarios similar of people that I've known or I'm close to. So, you know, tomorrow is no guarantee, and, you know, life is short, and you have to appreciate it and enjoy it. But I have, you know, no regrets from, you know, what I've done in my career. And, you know, I've met so many great people and a lot of great friends. And that's going to be the hardest part, is, you know, not seeing those people. You know, that's what makes our sport the best sport in the world, I think, is the people that are part of it, all the way around it. You know, and maybe it's that way in other sports too, but I don't think so. I don't get that vibe from other. I've gotten to know a lot of professional athletes in other sports, and I think we're small enough that it's still really, really special like that. So that's going to be one of the harder things for me. But, you know, I'm not going away. So I'm not fishing tournaments, but I'm not retiring. So it's going to be interesting, and it's a transition. And I don't know exactly what it is or where it's going to lead or what opportunities are going to come. But, you know, we're going to look at it all and try to make the decision that fits best for us. And, you know, that's important to me. You know, Sherry's a lot smarter than I would have, you know, I mean, then she knows me more better than anybody. And, you know, she's got the intuition to see things in the future. You know, that's the same thing. I learned that from my dad. My dad used to tell me that, well, someday you're going to look back and say, you know, when I told you this, you're going to say, oh, Dad wasn't so dumb after all. Well, my wife is the same way, you know, I mean, and you know what I'm saying. She's a big part of it. And she does not like to be in the spotlight. I mean, she doesn't like to be in camera. But I can promise you this, she's been a super integral part. And you know that because we're close. But she is a very, very integral part of who the KVD brand is.
Yeah. No, and you don't deserve, or you totally have worked your ass off and deserve every bit of retirement that you can get. But I think that you have to be realistic and realize that there's always going to be stuff floating around. I mean, you're Kevin VanDam. I mean, you're our Tom Brady. You know what I mean? And not that Tom came back, but not that has anything to do with it. But I mean, I think as fishing's just fishing's almost like pro fighting. Like, you know what I mean? Mike Tyson's still fighting. There's still that chance of him coming out to fight. And I think because pro fishing's like that, I don't think you'll ever be in a place where people aren't talking about like KVD might be making a comeback. But I think that that's a compliment.
Well, yeah, you know, I can pretty much tell you without fail, through my career in whatever it's my 33rd season, that every 5 years I can look back and say, yeah, I didn't think that would work like that, or I would be, this is the direction. So, you know, that's, you know, one of the things you have to do is you have to be flexible and, you know, look at opportunities as they come. And to me, this is a great opportunity. This announcement, this time for me, you know, because I really, like I say, I have a passion as an influencer and as an educator. And I feel like it's a good time and a great opportunity for me.
No, it
So
definitely is.
we'll see where it leads. But I don't know, Dave. I can't tell you any more than what
you're
I'm
good.
feeling at the time.
You're good. I'm just not talking and you keep talking, so I'm not going to stop you.
Yeah. I need to just shut up.
Do you when you look back at your career, do you have like a moment where you were like, man, I was at the top of the mountain right then? Or is it just a bunch of flashes of amazing moments because there were so many?
No, I don't. There's nothing like that just one thing that just stands out. The one thing that I can tell you as I got later into my career, I don't think I appreciated a lot of the success and things in the early to middle part of my career as I did later. You start to realize that it starts to sink in a little bit more, and it starts to settle around you a little bit more. And when people said, "Oh, I don't think Kevin's ever gonna win again," and then I finally did, it was like, "Oh, they see, there you go." And then I won again real quick after that, and it's like, gosh, you never know when the next one's going to be, and you never know if it's going to be your last one. So and that's what I've learned, is to truly appreciate that. And I'm not the only person. I mean, when I was there, when Clun won after a really long drought at St. John's River the first time that he won, and that was super special to see. I mean, that's a guy that basically was a big part of how I molded my career. I mean, how many people looked up to Rick Clun from my era, I mean, and multiple generations. So to see that was really cool. And, he said, never let anybody tell you that your best moments are behind you, or, or something along that exact line. I mean, that's basically what it was. That's so true. I mean, people told me that I couldn't make it in this sport when I started. There's like, you're not going to do it. You're too young. It takes too long. You're not going to be successful. You're not going to, I never didn't believe. And after I went out and fished the first tournament I ever fished, I knew right then that I could compete at the top level. And it was like, nobody was going to tell me. But you have to believe that. If you believe the things that people say, you're not going to get very well. I mean, that's what so many kids come up to me and say, man, what do I need to do? This is something I really want to do. And what's the most valuable lesson? And I said, if you truly believe in yourself and you put the work in, you can accomplish anything you put your mind to, and don't let anybody tell you any different. But you can't cheat yourself. You have to truly believe it, and you have to live it. And I see that in some of the best young anglers today. I mean, they're that committed and that focused, and and it pays off. I mean, old saying is like, the harder I work, the luckier I seem to get. Well, there's a reason for that, because there is no shortcuts. There's no substitute for hard work in anything, in sports or life, or it's just, I don't know why it's hard for people to see that or understand that, but that's just the fact that it is. There's no free lunch, and there's no easy way to top it. People might look at somebody else and say, man, I don't know why that guy got lucky. And I guess if you win the lotto or something like that. But in business, the most successful people that I know are workaholics. They just, it's effort in equals effort out.
Yeah, if you're going to be successful in anything, you're going to be busy, and you're going to be, and I think that's honestly, and I know this is going to sound bad in some ways, but I think that's why some people want to point to people that made it in the fishing industry or whatever industry and be like, well, they got lucky because of this or this. Because I think sometimes people aren't willing to accept the level of, like, while this is a celebration of everything you've accomplished in your career, this is also, you've missed out on a ton through your life because you were driven to accomplish that through your career. You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like this industry is full of people that were driven to do things that people said they couldn't do. And they did it because there was no option other. I mean, I don't know about you, but like, I never ever thought like, what if I can't make a living from the fishing industry? I mean, that's just what I was going to do. And I think everybody, and you're 100 times that, you know what I mean? But it's just, at the end of the day, it's work. Like, you have to work your ass off.
Well, exactly. So, I mean, everybody looks at Dave Mercer and goes, oh my God, he's funny, he laughs, he's entertaining on stage, blah, 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 this. But look, you're there at every event, at takeoff, get up at 4, MC and takeoff, going through introducing people, keeping things flowing. You get a fog delay, then you're on for another hour longer. During the day, you're commentating, you're going back and forth through it. Then you're doing the weigh-ins, and then after that, you come home and then you're doing a podcast, then you're doing a TV show. So, Dave Mercer, he is, why is he successful? He's not putting much work into it, right? Should you work your I mean, it's constantly. And then on top of that, the sponsor relationships and things, that takes a lot of time and work and effort too. So it's like, you're successful as what you put into it in anything. And fishing is for sure a big part of that. Some guys are really good at focusing at just the angling part.
Yeah.
And they've had that success. I mean, you look at a guy like Rick Clun, I would say that's, he is really at that, but then, there's other people that are successful at the other side of it. I mean, you look at Joe Thomas. I mean, there's a guy that has made a great career around professional fishing. He won a tournament early in his career and is springboarded into a lot of other opportunities for him too. But he's put the work in too. It's just some guys do it with a fishing rod, and other guys do it in other areas. I mean, Zona's. I mean, there's a guy that's put a ton of work into a lot of different avenues, and it doesn't matter. I mean, you look at a lot of people behind the scenes, they're not there because they're not some of the best that they are at what they do. You look at James Overstreet, there's one of the best guys there is with a camera, or Mike McInnes. Nobody knows who he is, but look behind the scenes. That's the reason that the Bassmasters television show is what it's been for, whatever, 25 or 30 years he's been a part of it, so, but it's all those things like that. It's just, when you're a fisherman, and I guess it's like Patrick Mahomes gets all the credit for winning the Super Bowl because he's the quarterback, but there's a whole lot of other people there that behind the scenes and coaching and things like that are equally as impressive, but just don't get the notoriety maybe.
Yeah, but I mean, they're all people that worked hard to. I mean, there's luck in everything, but luck doesn't last a lifetime. Luck doesn't last a career.
There's no consistency in luck. Yeah, I don't like the word luck. I like, I've been fortunate at times, but you make your own luck. Sometimes you can be unfortunate, sometimes you can be fortunate. When you set the hook on one and you're reeling him into the boat and he gets off in midair, it's unfortunate or unlucky when he bounces off the side and goes back in the lake. It's lucky when he goes in, but it wasn't lucky to get him to bite in the first place, to give yourself that opportunity.
Yeah. Do you have any terms you wish you had a do-over? Is there one that like still haunts you?
Lots of them.
Many of them.
Last one I fished. Yeah. Jillions of them. Lots of them.
Well, we were talking the other day. That's what shocked me. I'm like, it's been 2 weeks since this guy fished a tournament and you're still pissed that you didn't win the tournament. And I'm like, so how do you survive without that?
You've asked me this question like 10 times.
I know. It's just, it blows me away, but I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes.
Well,
it's
we'll see when I get to that point, I guess.
All right.
Sherry may send me back on tour. You never know.
No, I'm sure. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But dude, you deserve every bit. I mean, I've said this to you personally, but thank you for everything that you have given to this industry, everything you've given up you missed with your family to build this. And you've changed this sport, both on the water, off the water, in the boardroom. Every single spot of this sport is better because you touched it, because you were part of it. So, I mean, personally, I mean, I wouldn't have a job if it wasn't for you. So I am, and I'm one of many, many, many people that have been a benefit of KVD Inc. So I thank you, Sherry, your entire family for everything that you guys have done. And I just look forward to the future because I mean, it has to mean more time together, right? We'll get to hang out and have a little bit more fun together now, right?
I would hope so. So I appreciate it, Dave, very much, more than you know. And we all do our part. And I realize, over my career, definitely it's a lot of weight on your shoulders at times. And, I've had a bullseye on my back for a lot of years as a competitor and that, but I'm not there to shy away from it. And going forward in the future, that's the exact same thing, man. I'm here to continue to try to make this sport better, to grow this sport, create more opportunities for more people, because bottom line is I love it. It's my life. It's all I've ever known. It's all I ever want to be a part of. And that part is not changed and isn't going to change. It's who I am.
It truly is who you are. And I'm thankful for you, dude. And I thank you for our candid conversation.
Maybe now I can be a regular guest.
Oh, sure. All in KVD regular guest. I'll send over the paperwork right away, which we don't have. I mean, I'll just play this tape over to you, but all right. I'm bad at any of these things. So one and only KVD, everybody in your house is watching now. Give him a round of applause because he freaking deserves it. There you have it. The one and only Kevin VanDam. I can't thank Kevin enough for that conversation. I mean, it was if that wasn't awkwardly honest, I don't know what is. And I know Kevin thought I was searching for a particular answer. I swear to you, I was not. I mean, not that I wouldn't, but I was not at that time. But tell you one thing, I don't know where Kevin VanDam ends up in 5 years from now. Does he end up on a lawn chair in Boca Raton wearing a leisure suit? I would love to see that. But wherever he ends up, I can tell you two things. Number one, he deserves it. He has worked his ass off to be the person that he is. And everybody would love to be KVD until you see how hard it is to be KVD. His work ethic is second to none. And number two, I can guarantee you he'll be successful at it. Whether he decides to get into TV, whether he decides to get into content, whether he decides to write books, whether he decides to whittle wood. Kevin VanDam is one of the hardest, most tireless workers I've ever hung around with. I mean, literally makes you feel like, wow, what's wrong with me hanging around with him? And he'll be very, very successful at it. And he deserves whatever he wants it to be. So, question of the week, where do you guys think Kevin VanDam ends up? What do you think he ends up doing in the future? And number two, Bob Cobb, it's your time. Take it away.
Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe because Bob Cobb of the Bassmasters told you to. You hear?